The air in my office suddenly felt thin, too thin, as if all the oxygen had been sucked out with the funds. It wasn't the ringing phone or the distant traffic that broke the morning quiet. It was the sickening, deafening silence emanating from my laptop screen. The bank statement blinked back, a stark digital tableau of zeros and dwindling balances that felt like a punch to the gut. What I expected to see, the careful accumulation of years, my buffer, my future, was gone. Every line item, every projected gain, every penny I'd meticulously saved had been systematically emptied, leaving behind only the chilling white space of a betrayed ledger. The world outside continued its noisy, indifferent rhythm, but inside, a profound quiet had fallen, heavy with the weight of absolute loss. This wasn't just losing money, it was the dissolution of trust, a cold dread seeping into my bones, a direct violation that went far beyond mere digits. It was personal, absolute, an empty space where safety once resided. The initial shock quickly solidified into a chilling clarity, demanding immediate, precise action. The initial shock had been a tempest, but the aftermath settled into an unnerving calm, a profound stillness that replaced hysteria with a cold, almost clinical analysis. My world had fractured, yet in that wreckage, a singular, irrefutable truth emerged. Despair had been a luxury I couldn't afford. Instead, I turned the raw ache of betrayal into a precise, systematic inventory of facts. This was the crucible where emotional chaos met an emerging, unbreakable resolve. I understood then that if everything else could be taken, the one rule I would live by was absolute self-mastery. My mind became a quiet fortress, its defenses built not from anger, but from an almost detached clarity. The perpetrators, their faces and motives were startlingly clear to me, but the intricate, methodical how of their deception, the subtle threads, the hidden levers, the full scope of their coordinated effort that remained a tantalizing, infuriating blur, waiting to be illuminated. The grand vision wasn't always a mirage. Once, it was the very blueprint of our lives. We'd poured years, late nights, and every spare dollar into building something tangible, brick by economic brick, watching our projections materialize into real-world prosperity that far exceeded our initial dreams. The company wasn't just a business, it was a future we meticulously crafted, a testament to shared ambition and a quiet promise of security. I remembered the early days, the genuine excitement of every signed contract, every expansion, every dividend. Yet beneath this vibrant surface, a colder current had already begun to pull. Their quiet decisions, born of a self-serving entitlement and a palpable greed I couldn't then fathom, started diverting funds, slowly bleeding assets dry through opaque transfers and unaccounted expenditures. It wasn't merely a business loss on paper, it was a personal unraveling, pulling the financial foundation from under everything I'd painstakingly built, leaving me exposed, vulnerable, and questioning every shared memory. After the initial shock began to settle, a different kind of pressure built, the almost irresistible urge for immediate, satisfying retribution. Every fiber in my being screamed for a reactive strike to unravel their complacency with a swift, cutting blow. Yet the quiet hum of discipline, a lesson from years of watching markets, reminded me of the one inviolable rule of legendary traders: unwavering risk control and meticulous strategic planning. I wanted to explode, but I chose to calculate. This wasn't about vengeance, it was about precision. I wrestled with the desire to throw a grenade and instead committed to building a siege engine. That inner battle between primal impulse and patient strategy was the pivot point. It demanded rejecting reactive emotion for deliberate long-game action. This strategic pivot wasn't easy. It meant denying every reactive fiber in my being, but it was the only path to real power. I'm curious, have you ever had to pivot dramatically after a major setback, choosing discipline over impulse? With the mental blueprint sketched, the next phase involved gathering the unseen resources required for construction. The quiet work began not with a dramatic declaration, but with the systematic extraction of truth. While they continued to construct their flimsy public narrative, I started filling pages, one meticulously gathered document at a time. My first hurdle wasn't even them. It was the legal system itself. 3 separate attorneys, after brief consultations, cited insufficient standing understanding and a lack of irrefutable proof, declining to take on what they perceived as a weak case. This initial refusal didn't deter me. It merely clarified my direction. Instead of immediate litigation, I built a dossier, detailed bank statements from joint accounts, time-stamped emails outlining their financial misdirection, carefully archived text exchanges, even recorded phone calls I'd once dismissed as mere arguments, now listened to with a lawyer's ear. Each artifact became a line item in my personal ledger, a quiet accumulation of their careless confidence. They mistook my silence for surrender, yet it was the focused quiet of a surgeon precisely gathering instruments. Every seemingly innocuous document they generated from their own filings to casual correspondence was cross-referenced and annotated. My ledger was no longer an empty promise. It was a growing weight of undeniable evidence, quietly transforming their obliviousness into my precise power. The quiet satisfaction of my own planning settled, a counterpoint to the impending disruption I knew was coming for them. It began not with a bang, but with a series of quiet bureaucratic chimes, the delivery of a certified legal notice to their well-guarded address, a discreet email confirmation from my attorneys, and the inevitable phone call from a bewildered bank manager to theirs. This wasn't the chaos they'd always associated with challenges. It was the precise application of legal gravity, calibrated to their specific vulnerabilities. The document, titled Preliminary Notice of Asset Rebalancing and Fiduciary Review, specifically detailed the temporary freeze on the discretionary funds within the Sterling Family Trust. It wasn't a full seizure, but a calculated cessation of liquidity, directly impacting their access to capital they considered limitless. The notice cited a series of documented breaches against the trust's stated purpose, meticulous records of personal expenditures disguised as business investments, and a clear activation of the risk control clause, a provision they'd long mocked as my overly cautious insistence. Their initial response, as relayed by a surprisingly sympathetic paralegal, was a mix of dismissive laughter and outright incredulity. "Who does she think she is?" was the refrain, followed by assurances that their people would clear it up instantly. But the legal framework I had meticulously constructed was designed to be quiet, unyielding. No shouting, no dramatic confrontations, just the undeniable reality of an asset, once fluid, now temporarily immobile. This subtle pattern interrupt was just the first carefully placed stone in their path, shifting their world from assumed control to a dawning, unnerving uncertainty. The legal notices started arriving like junk mail, thick envelopes filled with accusations designed to sting rather than inform. They didn't just contest the facts, they wanted to paint a picture of me that was utterly unrecognizable to anyone who knew the truth, while their online presence amplified every baseless claim, turning whispers into shouts across social media and local forums. I maintained a deliberate quiet. Each new headline was an attempt to provoke a reaction, to drag me into their muddy public spectacle, but I refused to give them that satisfaction. My strategy wasn't to engage in a war of words. Instead, I let their noise highlight my calm, controlled approach. Yet their tactics weren't entirely without effect. The frivolous discovery requests alone racked up thousands in legal fees, not just for my team's time, but for the unexpected cost of retrieving decades-old financial records from dormant archives. Then came their petition for an injunction, a transparent attempt to freeze my assets and delay the proceedings by another 6 weeks, citing new evidence they had yet to produce. Each such maneuver was a setback, a small but costly friction, forcing me to reassess timelines and allocate additional funds. But these were merely delays, not deterrents. The waiting was frustrating, yes, but it also offered valuable time for my team to meticulously prepare, turning their desperate bluster into an inadvertent gift of strategic advantage. The room, a stark testament to neutrality, amplified every quiet breath, every rustle of paper. For months, their words had been a cacophony of carefully crafted denials, but today, the only voices that truly mattered were etched in black and white. My hands rested calmly on a leather-bound folio containing what I simply referred to as the ledger. Its very presence seemed to drain the bluster from David's usual bravado, leaving him with an unsettling, pale silence as the mediator opened the proceedings. When it was my turn, I spoke without inflection, directing everyone everyone to the first tab. Exhibit A was not merely a collection of bank statements, but a painstakingly cross-referenced chronicle of every inflated invoice, every diverted payment, and every ghost vendor they had created over 2 years. Each entry had a corresponding date, amount, and an archived communication. David and Sarah's initial scoffing faded into nervous whispers as I systematically presented the paper trail, highlighting discrepancies their creative accounting couldn't hide, nor their lawyers could easily dismiss. The room, once filled with their performative outrage, now only heard the steady turning of pages. Then came the moment that shattered their carefully constructed reality. Their defense hinged on claiming ignorance of the largest asset transfer, attributing it to an administrative error. But the final tab of my presentation, labeled Pattern Interrupt, contained a digital receipt, a recovered geo-located email chain, time-stamped after the alleged error, explicitly detailing their celebratory plans for the newly acquired funds. The metadata, confirmed by a neutral IT expert, was irrefutable. I watched their faces fall, the mask of indignation dissolving into sheer, desperate panic, a sudden chilling silence enveloping them. The open loop of their deception was not only closed, it was sealed with an undeniable digital fingerprint. The dust settled, not with a crash, but with a quiet accumulation of finalized paperwork. My reputation, though momentarily obscured by their noise, had begun its steady, dignified resurgence, reclaiming the deeds to the apartment building and untangling the labyrinthine corporate structures were tedious, yes, but each signature, each notarized document, felt like another brick in a new, unshakable foundation. The accounts, once frozen, now hummed with activity, but under a new charter. Every transaction meticulously logged, every partner rigorously vetted. Where chaos had once dictated, meticulous order now reigned. My new ventures operated on principles of transparency and robust due diligence, a direct antithesis to the old guard's recklessness. This wasn't merely about growth, it was about unyielding resilience. The lingering debris of their self-destruction was a stark reminder, yet it only underscored the solid ground beneath my feet. Risk control wasn't just a business strategy, it became my guiding life principle. What's one area of your life where you've successfully implemented better risk control? The silence that followed wasn't empty. It hummed with the quiet calculation of a mind utterly at peace. My transformation felt complete, not a sudden shift, but the deliberate sharpening of a blade. I understood now that mastery wasn't about avoiding risk, but controlling it personally and financially. The market of my own life had once felt chaotic, but now I held the reins, guided by confidence born of hard-won wisdom. New horizons called a strategic investment already taking shape. They thought I was losing money. I was merely recalculating my leverage, and now I trade in my own undefeated future.